So you go to Cortana in Windows, or in Mac, you just do Control Spacebar and go to your Spotlight. And here you type PowerShell. And you click on Windows PowerShell. And you say, it's better if you say run as administrator, because sometimes some security restrictions might get in the way of certain of these activities. So run as administrator. And then here you can issue commands that I will be demonstrating. For example, and I'll show you the details of these in a few minutes, but ipconfig might be one of them. Or you can say ipconfig all. You can also output that to a text file, and I think we did that before, right? So you could output that to something like, and if you want to put it in a directory, like I have a directory called data. So let's say you don't have that directory. You can make a directory as follows. You could say mkdir, and then you can make a directory called labwork1 or something. And that directory has now been created. So now here, I could actually cd. I could go over that directory. I could say cd for change directory, then whatever you called it, labwork1 or something. You have to put a backslash there because this is qualified from the C drive. So C:\\, and then labwork1. And now you see here, I'm in that directory. So that my command prompt shows me that's the directory I'm in the operating system. And now I can say ipconfig/all. And then I can say redirect it to a file called whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter too much. Networking details or something. So now we have this file called networking details. And the results of our ipconfig, which shows us many things. And I think we talked about this in a previous class. Some of the important things are the default gateway that we need for this lab activity. So some other things we could use here, things like netstat, and we talked about how netstat is good for finding open ports. So I can say netstat. And I actually gave you an instruction sheet last week, I think, with some different parameters and flags you can use with netstat. Netstat shows you all of your open ports. I don't know why this is so slow, but I guess we'll get there eventually. I'm going to press Control-C because I want to break out of this because I don't want to spend a lot of time now. But I could also do netstat. And if I do netstat with a question mark, that'll give me all of the flags I could use. So for example, I could display the routing table, and we'll talk about routing tables in a bit. We have to talk a little bit more about IP addresses for that as well. We could also do netstat-A, and that will show me all of the active connections going on my computer. Now let's go and look at this file we made before. So a minute ago, we got all of the networking details in our computer using ipconfig. So we get all of the networking details of our computer using ipconfig. And a good way to do that is to use the all flag as well. So say /all audio level test. Yeah, I just want to make sure that my mic levels are good. All right, good. So I'm just recording all of this stuff as well so you can watch this later. So here in my Windows PowerShell, so here's an activity you can do. You can just watch me now because later on you can take this document and grab the updated document, right? Because I'm making a number of updates to here. It's available through the Dropbox, and I'll throw it up in your Google Classroom as well. So in PowerShell, you can type ping And just like we did over here in this thing, you can type 192.168.1 because for reasons we're going to talk about IP assignment, but addresses which start with 192 will always be on your own local network assigned by your router. And I'll show you more training on that later. It's also described in a lot of detail in the document I gave you before, TCP/IP guide, and we'll talk more about it now. But let's do this command and see what happens. 1.155. So we'll say ping, and you can follow along with me if you want. And remember, the 255 is what's called a broadcast address, and we'll see the meaning of that in a minute. So dump that in PowerShell. So say Control V to paste. Oh, that could be because I'm running a VPN. I think if I turn my VPN off, that'll work better. So the concept of a VPN, I think I told you about it earlier on. The idea here is that for computer security, it's very insecure if I go directly from my own computer to my ISP. I mean, I know I'm not very important and the FBI is not spying on me. They don't care about me. But in principle, it's still a possibility. Somebody could intercept your data between this computer and getting to your home router, and then your ISP can also spy on what you're doing. And if you have a VPN, that encrypts your data using ways that I'll talk about in a few minutes. We'll actually roll some VPN analysis into this lab. Now that I've turned off my VPN, let's see if I'm getting a different result. Oh, that's odd. I should be getting more stuff. I'm going to go and look at my file, which I got from my IP configuration, so I'll go to that directory that I made. So here's my directory. I think I called it like networking details or something. Oh, lab work 1 I called it. Okay, there it is. I'm going to open this and look at it. And what I want to find out right now is my IP address. So the first thing and I'm pretty sure that sounds familiar. I think this was like your lab activity 1. I got you to do that. Oh, here, this is interesting. Look, no, actually, that's not my wireless adapter. That's something else. I don't know what that is. It's like something virtual in my operating system. What I want is my wireless LAN adapter. And my preferred IP address is what? What is my preferred IP address? Let's go and search. Say Control F, preferred. Yeah, I've got one there. That's an IP6. Is that my address? Maybe it is. I don't know what I'm doing. I might have done something strange with my computer. Let's save this. Yeah, that's from VMware. That's not a physical network interface adapter. Oh, there we go. That's actually, I think, my real address. Yeah, right there. So that's the IP address of my computer. And keep track of that because you might need that again later. So here's the table that I want you to fill out for lab activity 1. Fill out this table. We'll call this lab activity 2, and I'll split this document out. I'll give you the thing on packet tracing next week. So wait, I'll say file save as. And I'll upload this to Google Classroom when we're done so we don't get confused. Lab activity 2. Yeah, analyzing the home network. Okay, so that will be something for later on. So fill out this table. This is your lab deliverable, which is due next week. How are we doing for time? Well, I've got another 20 minutes. IP address, default gateway. MAC address, and you might have a couple of network interface adapters on your computer, so just of any, well, yeah, I mean, you might just of any of the NICs, network interface connectors or adapters on your computer. And then you want your external, right? So you want your external IP address, and what that means we'll talk about now. And you want your DNS server address. And you want your DHCP server address. And I think that's most of what you want. There might be, I think there's one or two other ones, but we'll get to them in a second. All right, so let's go through. I'm actually going to go through this with you right now, and I'm recording all of this on Camtasia, and I'll kick out the video when we're done. So let's review, and I know that this is stuff I've now talked about 3 or 4 times, but it's pretty foundationally important. So IP address of my computer, not of my router, right? So the default gateway, now I also want my external IP address, meaning this is the IP address that the outside world sees me on. Nobody can get to my computer, because if you try pinging my IP address, let's see what it is again. So where did I get this from? And where are you going to get it from? You did ipconfig, and you probably redirected it to a text file. Save the output in a text file. And then you study that and you find the preferred IP address. And watch the video again if you want to see how I did it. So that's my address on my computer. Now, if you go try access that, you will not be able to. Right? Let's talk again. Remember the thing in the Starbucks shop? We talked about that. Let's talk about it again. So now as an experiment, ping your own IP address and see what happens. So go to PowerShell. If you want, you can type CLS to clear the screen. You say ping -A means it interrogates the DNS cache and it reports the local host name. If you don't understand that, just do it. We'll get into more details on that later. So there's my IP address. So that basically means that from my computer, I'm connecting to my computer, and you see there the effect of the -A. That's telling me what my host name is. And if you want, you can also get your host name. I guess we can put that in there as one of the requirements. So use ping-A to get your own host name. So your host name is the name of your computer according to the configuration of your TCP/IP adapter. Let's see what happens on Windows if I go and open my networking center. So I pressed the Windows key, and here I'm going to go and click on Network Settings. And I'm going to find Network. And I'm going to go over here. These are all of my network settings. So you can see all of the available routers that are within reach, like those belong to my neighbors. Those doesn't have to do with me. Vikings Fjord is my router. And if I go here to Wi-Fi, take a look at the settings there. So that's showing me all of the details of my router. Right? So what happens, and this would be what you would do if you were a hacker, by the way. You would get these addresses and you try playing with them. What happens if I try pinging 018? Oh, actually, that was me. That was my, sorry, I forgot. That was my own. Those are my DNS servers. So using your Windows control panel, and watch the video to see how I did it, get these details. Oh, I have some chat comments coming in here. Yes, Prabjot Singh. What I would say for right now, because there's so much to go through, if you have a Mac, when you do the lab, just say, first of all, there's a couple of things. You could go and Google it on YouTube, but I'm not really sure about supporting multiple platforms, because it's going to be so much time to do that. I'm just not really sure. I'll try it next week. What I would say for right now is if you have a Mac, just say in your lab, I have a Mac and I could not figure out how to do this. Right? You can also go and do your own Googling, how to find IP address on a Mac, and I'll try and demonstrate it next week. But honestly, this is a little bit too much responsibility for me, right? Normally the way we would do this is in a classroom on one standard set of computers. If I have to start splitting out all the instructions for Mac, with apologies to my Mac users, I'm a human being. I have a limited amount of mental energy to keep track of this. So my Mac users just write in your instruction, I have a Mac, I was not able to follow the instructions. Right? That's the best I can do. I'll try and put my Mac on the network next week and demonstrate it. But for right now, in the remaining 15 minutes of class, I just can't do it. Sorry. I'll try to get to it next week. So if you have a Mac, it will be an adequately good thing. You can just say, I have a Mac, I was not. Mac users, you can just hand this in and state, I have a Mac, I was not able to follow the instructions. That's what I can do for you right now. Okay, so IP config flush DNS, we'll get to that in a second. That's a good question. But let me do this one step at a time. You can either go and search on YouTube to find, because it's not different. It's not much different. It's just, it's too much for me to sort of split the instructions, right? I'll try to get to it next week, but I just can't do it right now. So hand this in and just say, I have a Mac, I was not able to do this. You can do your own, you can look on YouTube. If you can find anything good, or otherwise just state, I was not able to do this because I didn't have instructions for Mac. And next week, I'll try and demonstrate on my Mac, but I mean, I'm just trying to balance off all the, yeah, so let's say next week I'll bring my Mac on the lab and I'll show you how to do that. Because if I go now, by the time I get my Mac and put it on the network and share it, it's going to be 12 o'clock. We'll be out of time. All right, somebody is asking here, sir, can you tell what to type? Yeah, so we've already said. So Prabjot, sorry, I will demonstrate next week, not right now. I just don't have time. We'll demo next week. And, okay, so now we're being asked by Deval about IP config flush DNS. So that's a good question. Let's talk about that. I have to talk about it, and let's see how we're making out here. Well, 10 minutes, we'll see. We'll see how far we get. So host name, we saw about that. DHCP address, that also comes from IP config. And I will get to the question about what does flush DNS mean. I'll talk about that, but I have to talk about DNS for. I don't know if I'll necessarily get to it right now, but we'll definitely add it. I'm going to add it in the slides to make sure I talk about it next week when I talk about DNS settings. Hang on. In fact, we're going to have 1 hour next week. We'll talk about those 3 topics together. I'll leave a little reminder for myself here. November 28th. Demonstrate network settings on a Macintosh. Talk about DNS. I see a comment. I'll get to it in a minute. Hang on. I just want to see how we're going to tie all of these things together. Alright, let me see what my comments are. Could you please give us a quick review? Yes, I'm going to get to that in a couple of seconds. Just a second, Jagaraj. I'll get to you in a minute. In fact, I think I'm going to simplify it down a little bit. Because I know what I can cover when we're in class. I'm still figuring out how things actually work over the web interface. So, all right, let me see about today's lab. I think I'm going to simplify it down here. So if you have a Mac, I would say just hand in the lab and say I couldn't do it. That's as much as I can do for you right now. I can't really support like multiple different kinds of hardware in one online class. Otherwise, this will be something for next week. I want you to fill in this table. So what you're to do for this week's lab, I want to know your IP address, your default gate. Actually, let's just even simplify this down more. So hand in this document and tell me the following information. So IP address of your computer, IP address of your default gateway, and your DNS server IP address. Just type them right here. Type them in right here in this exact spot right there. You don't even have to do anything else after this. For now, we'll figure out a way to get it done next week. Because today I did want to get onto some of the stuff about the Cisco certification exams. I think that was important, so that did take a bit of time, but I'm glad we got that done. You don't have to do anything below this line for right now. You can if you want, but you don't need to. and your DHCP server. All of this is available by doing TCP/IP config. Sorry, ipconfig/all. So if you go and look at that file, your networking details file, I mean, you can copy and paste it into this document if you want. You don't need to do that. But let's go and look there together. We've got like another 4 minutes, which should be enough time. So there is your MAC address. That's the MAC address of your adapter. That's one of the things I want. Of your network interface adapter. And your IP address we've already seen. Your default gateway is just called gateway. So you see your default gateway is right there. You can give me, that's actually the MAC address of your default gateway, and that's the IP address of your default gateway. So I'd like that information. And there's your DHCP server. That's another thing that we wanted. And there's your DNS servers. So right here, this will tell you the rest of the stuff you need. Oops, that's dynamic host configuration protocol server. Yeah, so that's that. And your DNS servers are there. And what's the significance of those? We'll get into that later on. So I think that's about end of class. I've had some chat comments coming in. I'll get to them in a second. Hang on. So I'm going to upload, after I let you guys go, I'll update the stuff in Google Classroom. So this is the lab, which is available for, which is due for next week. All right, I have 4 comments coming in. Let's see what they are. Sir, we have class. Go. Class is over. Leave. Yes, nothing else. You're right, Manpreet. Absolutely nothing else. No. Go. Class is over. Go. Bye. See you later.